Hey Lisa, could you talk about resistance to emotional patterns? I've been really resisting my job and I'm trying to push through it, but the more that I try to just focus on my work, the more I hate it and want out. Thanks so much. In the struggle zone today. You gotta follow love, Erica. We've talked about this. Not the mind. You know, most people don't want to hear this because they want to carry on doing things because it relaxes them intellectually, it relaxes their mind, so they want to carry on behaving in a certain way and not changing their life. But it's like the internal and external have to match up. You have to follow love. That's really risky because most of us are invested in jobs that we hate, in situations we don't like, in just trying to pay the bills, and the idea of following love is terrifying. And what does that even mean? It's not really you follow love, it's allowing that love to come out. And that love won't come from doing a job you hate. Somebody downloaded one of my talks and uploaded it to their channel, I'm sure just to advertise them, their own channel. I don't mind people doing that, but there's this one guy that does it, that I know does it to a lot of spiritual teachers. He downloads and uploads their talks, and he downloaded and uploaded mine, and that's okay. I don't mind people doing that. Like, I give these away free and I'm happy for them to be shared around the internet. But he put the title on it, "Be in the Moment," and something like the job you hate. And that's totally not what I'm saying, because I think when you're in the moment, when you collapse and you stop working from the intellect, then the body naturally goes back to that which it loves. It follows love over the intellect. And I think a lot of people in their work and in their life situations have followed the intellect, and then they wonder why it doesn't work, because they followed fear. They're trying to get away from fear, and then by trying to avoid fear, they wonder why they don't like their job or they don't like their situation. And I could see this so strongly when I was younger, and it scared the shit out of me as well, following love and following what I was passionate about. I was also super lucky because I'm white and I'm from a well-educated background, and my parents aren't rich, but they're middle class, so you know, I mean, my parents wouldn't appreciate me coming to them and asking them to financially support me or save me from anything, but you know, there is always that in the back of the mind. But I really did. And I was also lucky because I was young, I didn't have lots of things. But I really did jump and give up a lot of things. I was a theatre writer, and I did really well in theatre writing. I'd just begun to make contacts. I had a house that I lived in London where I paid very little rent, and in exchange I rented out the rooms and I managed it. I had a part-time job where I worked with children with emotional behavioural disorders. And I got paid very well from that because nobody wanted to do it, and I was actually very good at it. And I quit it all to follow this subject. Everything. I gave up everything. All my contacts and the success that I'd had with playwriting, I just gave it up. And I gave up playwriting for 10 years. It's only recently, the last few years, I got back into it. Yeah, but for 10 years I didn't do it at all. And I just followed this subject because my heart called for it. And I just followed. It wasn't necessarily the subject, I just followed more and more what felt like truth, and I didn't buy into the structure of this society. I meet so many people that don't like their jobs or don't like their living situation or their family, but they just keep staying in it. They don't make any change. And they think that when they're in the moment, then they'll start appreciating what they have, which is true, but it's like your external is living in a contracted sense of I. It's like your external life is buying into society's identity. Like it's buying into the fear, it's buying into all the propaganda of this society. And then it's sort of wanting to wake up so it doesn't feel pain in all these situations, but it can't see that the way in which they're living their life is an identified life. They're living within the confine of an identified structure. And it's like I always felt like I've lived on the outsides of society. I mean, I've sort of lived on the outside because I've used it, you know, I trade and I buy food and I do certain things with the society. But I've always lived on the outskirts of it. I know if I'm working in a job where everyone's identified, you know, when I go into that job, I'm going to have to pretend I'm identified too. Which is okay to an extent, but, you know, if you're doing that all the time and you're forcing yourself to go into something you really hate, where could there possibly, I mean, how can that possibly line up with this message? I'm not trying to talk anyone into quitting their jobs before people begin to sue me next week or something. I'm not trying to talk you into that. I'm just trying to point out that, you know, if you don't enjoy being with your family because they keep emotionally offloading onto you and they expect too much from you, but you keep going back into that situation, why do you keep going back into it? That cannot be following love. That can't be love for them. Why do you keep buying into that? I'm not saying it's possible in all ways to avoid this identified society, but you've got to address your life. A lot of time when I come across people that are into non-duality, some people really go for it and really embrace it, but some people, I sometimes think that they've rejected other spiritualities because in a way it's been too hardcore, and they come into non-duality and they're like, okay, I just have to realize I'm consciousness and then I will like my job or I'll like my family. And I don't think it's as easy as that, because why would you be around people that are emotionally dumping on you, or in a job which is making you do really terrible things to other people, like you're working in a very unethical business? Like in our society, I think it's all to do with the state of mind, because in our society, you know, there's so many different possibilities of living, and if you don't open up your mind to all those possibilities, then things won't change. And it's not like you do it. So then the question is, who does it? And there isn't someone, so it's not prescribing to anyone. This is a description of something that happens. It's like as that instrument's updated and it learns more and more about this subject and it begins to question all its limitations, then it's like that person moves out of the way and then life gets to act more freely. But while that person's tight and contracted and believes in itself, that has to be addressed to an extent for it to move out of the way and for who you truly are to shine through. If you keep being in mental turmoil about your parents or your work, then that needs to be addressed in order for that light to shine through. But I'm not speaking to someone, because there is no one there. There is a functioning that's appearing. So I say these words and it reconditions the brain to an extent, or it drops ideas, and then who you truly are is that beingness, is that alive presence which is everywhere. And I know it sounds like a contradiction, but you have to hold that contradiction. And sometimes I'm going to be more on the present side and sometimes more on the person side. And I'm always going to contradict myself, because you cannot talk about this subject. How could you talk about this subject?